also you got to remember back to the being comfortable in your own skin. Like we got to be okay with who we are.
Mm,
I'm going to love on all people. I'm going to try to be kind to all people at all times, but that doesn't mean everybody's got to like me,
mm-hmm.
and I don't got to be like everybody else. If we're authentic in who we are, like we're talking about, and we're faithful to that authenticity, but we're also appreciative and respectful and loving to other people, no matter what their differences are. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect it. I can see them for what they see. That allows for a more enjoyable life.
Welcome to Impact and Fulfillment with Coach Mike D, where you'll gain practical wisdom and dynamic insight from amazing conversations to live your best life.
What's going on, y'all? This is Coach Mike D with another episode of Impact and Fulfillment. So dig this, man. I have a special guest. I have a friend of mine. I have a dude who's gone through a lot of transitions, but who's also impacted a lot of lives on a lot of different levels. But most importantly, he's a man of God. So he's a brother of faith. He's a husband. He's a dad. Back in the day, when you see the name, if you're like a basketball aficionado, you're going to be like, okay, I think this dude kind of led a team to the Sweet 16 back in like the early 2000s. And I think I remember this name in the college basketball coaching circuit and all of that. His name's going to probably ring a bell. And if you're in and around Knoxville, Tennessee, his name definitely rings a bell because he's on the radio at times, still doing commentary for basketball. But now he's in wealth management. He's a founder of a company in that space. And so he's got, again, I told you he multifaceted. He brings a lot to the table, and but he's a dynamic dude. And the guy that I have today is my friend, Mark Pancratz. Mark, what's up, my guy?
Mike, great to see you, man. Excited to spend some time with you today.
Man, I'm excited to have you, dude. And a little sidebar before we jump in. Mark and I connected years ago and here in Knoxville, Tennessee, at Mr. Ed's swimming class. And I don't know if he remembers all the nuances, but he and his wife, Brooke, they had just had their third little girl. And they were doing swimming classes with one of the older kids. And Mark was bringing the other girl after another appointment to the swimming lesson. And this newborn baby was there with his wife. And she had to get in the pool with the daughter who was doing swimming lessons. So she asked my wife, she said, hey, I know this might be kind of crazy, but do you mind holding my baby while we take the swimming class until my husband gets here? My wife loves little babies. She was like, oh, please give me that baby. And so long story short, Mark pulled up and he was probably like, who are these people holding my newborn at the swimming lesson? But that's the connection, and that was the spark that, brought us together.
Yeah, it was a great, and nothing that was not odd. Mr. Ed's whole the swimming lessons like in his backyard and the indoor pool, like giving Tootsie Rolls. Like, you start thinking about what that was like. It's like, well, did we really do that? So that your wife holding my youngest was not the weirdest thing that day by a long shot.
And it's funny even thinking about it because I remember mentioning to folks who are in the Knoxville area about Mr. Ed. And I guess he's an icon in the whole swimming world because I met people like my age that said, oh, yeah, I took swimming lessons from him 30-something years ago in his backyard in this little swimming facility that was built. Anyway, that's a little funny conversation.
Yeah, good time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we jump into your story, man, I always like to have the guests give shout outs because who are we without the wind beneath our wings, the folks that actually bring us support, the people that we actually do what we do on a daily basis for? Give some shout outs, man, and then we'll kind of jump into your story.
Well, first, it's the Lord, our Savior, what he's brought me through to get to this point and continue to be with me is first and foremost. Man, there are so many people that I love to mention. We want to have time for all of them. Obviously, my parents, my dad, some of the things that he's instilled in me that we'll probably talk about. My coaches, my high school coach in basketball, really hard on me, but man, he taught me a lot. Coach Bruce Pearl, who I played for and worked for, my father-in-law, who, man, he reflected the Lord and is the one that really directed me in his path, just the way that he managed his life and went through life. And then obviously my wife, my daughters, man, they're my everything. And so couldn't do it without them.
Man, I love that, man. It's just, when you connect with someone and you can really see that they come from a scenario in which there were solid examples around them, it shows. Because, as a parent, I'm a parent as well, have a little boy and a little girl. I've come to learn that it's not always what I say, but the example that I set that has more impact or the most impact on their lives. And so all the figures that you mentioned, seem to have set really good examples for you as you started to kind of traverse life. So that's really awesome, man.
Yeah, you probably have heard before that it's caught, not taught. It's not what we say to our kids or say to the people that work with us or our spouses. It's what we do, and they catch it through watching our actions, not necessarily hearing our words. And so you're right. I had great role models, but I also had role models that did speak into me that when I experienced people that didn't do the right thing, or didn't handle the situation the right way, I had wise people that spoke into me that helped guide me to be like, all right, that's not the right path to go down. Even though that person might have looked admirable or you might have thought highly of them, I had people that poured into me to help direct my paths, and still do to this day, because we're all messing up on a daily basis, especially when it comes to that parenting thing. But yeah, you're right. It's those people are huge impact.
I love it, man. And so speaking of pouring into and setting examples, man, take us back, man. So I think you're from somewhere around Chicago or somewhere in Illinois, up there, right?
Yeah.
And you also, I think that in your dad like 7 feet tall or somewhere close to 7 feet tall. Now you're not a 7-footer, but just thinking having a dad that's 7 feet, in the Chicago area. Basketball, in my opinion, or my suspicion, is something that probably started to play out a little early in life. But talk to us a little bit about growing up, man.
Yeah, so now it was my dad. My dad's about 6'10", and my mom's 5'2". So I'm dead in the middle. My brothers and I'm one of four. My brothers and I would be teasing my mom, like, Ma, if you were only like 5'8", we would have had a chance to make it to the league. But yeah, my whole family is a sports family. My mom played college volleyball at DePaul University in Chicago. My dad played for DePaul, and it was at the time when DePaul was actually pretty good. They made it to the NCAA tournament, and my dad had a chance to go play professionally, but he chose to stay back and get married to my mom and get into the family business. My grandparents were medics in the war, and they came out and started a company, Chicago Hospital Supply, just a little old company that my dad chose to partner with his family as opposed to keep going playing ball. But my dad coached me growing up. We were around ball all the time. Sports was in our blood for sure, and that just became who we were in a lot of ways.
And we're going to jump back into that, but you said something that was quite interesting that caught my eye. You said he chose to partner with his family. And it's interesting. And I know that was a different era where you weren't talking about, $100 million contracts and all of that. But even still, the whole concept of he chose to partner with his family as opposed to pursuing professional basketball. Have you thought about like that concept specifically, and how, again, as we get further along in your story, how that maybe influences you subconsciously in your decisions going from playing ball to coaching to then now being in wealth management?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that saying of it was caught, not taught. My dad, family was always a big thing for us. Weekends we get together, and although the Bears have always been terrible, we get together on Sundays as a family and watch the Bears. My uncles, my dad was one of seven. We'd go to my cousins' games and watch them if we didn't have a game. I mean, we were a close-knit family. But the caught not taught. When I made the decision to get out of coaching at the University of Tennessee, I mean, it's still silly to say and even think about because my title was assistant to that coach, but I wasn't like one of the dudes. I wasn't one of the guys. But when I left coaching, it was front page of the sports because people knew I didn't get fired, and they were like, "Why would you ever leave the University of Tennessee when you're coaching basketball? It's so many people's dream. I mean, this city in so many ways bleeds orange and white."
Mm-hmm.
And I just left, and I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't know what I was going to go do. But the reason I left was because I saw what that coaching lifestyle was like, where you're never home. I was already experiencing that, but then you're basically in it to move every 4 to 6 years. There's very few guys that are, that are the Mike Krzyzewskis that are at one place for their entire career. They're moving around, and I didn't want my wife and my girls to have to be moving up and around the country every 4, 5, 6 years. And I wanted to be able to coach my own kids as opposed to coaching somebody else's kids and never seeing my own. So making that decision for my family was really, really hard. But it's something I saw just in my dad's own decisions about doing what he felt was best for his family as opposed to pursuing that basketball career. And again, like you said, Mike, he wasn't making tons of money. He probably would have had to go overseas, which made the decision even a little bit easier. But it's still something that, impacted my life, 20 years later, 30 years later.
And it's so interesting because you making that decision is a lot harder than others because literally for you, ball was life, right? I mean, grew up playing ball. I mean, you just got inducted into like the Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame. You played college ball at UW Milwaukee and, led them to a Sweet 16. And like, I think 2 years in a row, you got eliminated by the eventual national champion. Like, I mean, that was it. And then your coach from UW Milwaukee ended up being Bruce Pearl, who came to University of Tennessee. And once you finished there, you came and coached with him. So like ball was life for you. Like, yeah. And so what's interesting about thinking about your level with that, when people hear, how folks talk about professional athletes and how, they're like, oh, it should be easy for you to retire. I mean, you got all the money and you've done this and you've done that. But if you don't take a step back and think that that's what this person has been doing from like the age of 5 or 6 for like 20 years straight, that's a hard decision.
Yeah. But I think, in ball, in business, sometimes for moms, their identity is in their being a mom, and then the kids leave the house and they realize like, well, shoot, now what? Like I've lost that huge identity, that piece of me. Ball, that was for me. I mean, that's what everybody knew me as, was what I saw my family as, is like we were basketball. And I tell a story all the time. Like when I was coaching at Tennessee, especially when we were winning, I could call a lot of people in town and say, "Hey, Mike, this is Mark. I'm assistant basketball coach at Tennessee. Man, my calendar just freed up tomorrow. You want to go grab lunch?" And there's a lot of people in town that would say, "Yeah, absolutely," because they want to hear inside of Tennessee basketball. They want to tell their buddies and their family members that they're going to go have lunch with somebody on the basketball staff. Then you step out, and not only do you step out of basketball, but you step into wealth management, and you're making those same phone calls to relationships, people even family members, and you're calling them, trying to set a meeting to discuss financial planning with the heart of goal. We're just trying to help somebody. But now their willingness to go grab lunch or get together, they're ghosting you. It's crickets. It's like, well, hold up now. Like just because of basketball. So you realize and you struggle with so many people were friends with you or associates with you because of what you could provide them in the way of your identity of basketball. And that's hard to deal with. And so the professional athletes, the individual, those people start scattering after that is no longer there, or they can't serve them in some capacity. And it's hard to deal with. But it's not just sports. I see it all the time with guys with business. they put their identity in their career or their title or how much money they're making. And if that starts to change a little bit, their stress level and anxiety and who they are for their wife and their kids, it takes a tailspin down. And thankfully, later in life, at the age of 32 years old, that's when I got saved and I found the Lord. And having my identity in Him, it allows me to enables me and strengthens me to deal with those ups and downs that life still throws you. Even if, because my identity is not in things or a title or an amount of money.
Man, that is so powerful. And having an identity in Christ really supersedes everything, right? But as a people, we're challenged with dealing with worldly scenarios, worldly issues, worldly relationships. And so to your point, having an identity that supersedes all of that is of the utmost importance. And so I'm 100% in alignment there. And it's so interesting when you mention the concept of identity. When I'm speaking to groups, there's an activity that I do at times, and I call it the puzzle pieces, right? And so what I'll do is I'll pass out all the puzzle pieces or pass out the pieces to this 500-piece puzzle. And I pass everyone a piece, and I ask each one in the room, okay, can you tell me what this 500-piece puzzle becomes by looking at your one piece? Of all the dozens of times or hundreds of times or whatever that I've done this presentation, not one person has been able to tell me what that 500-piece puzzle becomes by looking at one piece. So then I tell them, get in small groups. All right, get a few pieces together. Now, can you tell me exactly what this, in working groups, can you tell me what this 500-piece puzzle becomes? Nobody has been able to effectively tell me what that puzzle becomes by looking at just a few pieces. See, the thing is, we are all 500-piece puzzles, right? We're not defined by any one singular piece, but the challenge is we're also incomplete without all the pieces. And so most of us tend to find one or two pieces that are shiny that we want to put out front, and we lead with those, and we, in essence, build our identity off of those one or two pieces. But the challenge becomes those one or two pieces are nothing without all the other pieces, and those one or two pieces don't completely define us. And so we have to start understanding the layers. But the biggest thing, and you shared it a minute ago, is that we need to make sure we place our identity in our relationship with Christ, which supersedes everything when it comes to things of this world. So
yeah, and we have to be comfortable, and to continue on that analogy, that my 500 puzzle is my 500 puzzle, and it's unique and it's glorious and it's awesome and it's great, and it doesn't matter what your puzzle looks like. They're all going to be different. The problem that is extended even more is when we start comparing those puzzles. We start comparing each other's stories, because the reality is, look, in my life, Mike, and yours, you spend a lot of time with successful people, and every one of those successful people, they've got challenges that they're dealing with behind the scenes. The Instagram post, the social media shows that it's all good, but they're all dealing with struggles, and we don't know what those struggles are, but we're comparing their highlight reels to all of our bloopers and all of our struggles, which just kills the joy. It doesn't allow us to celebrate the blessings that we got and all the good things that are going on in our lives because of that comparison. So it's, yes, we've got to have that unique story, but we got to be comfortable in our own skin with what we're supposed to be doing and not worry about other people.
Ooh, we got to be comfortable in our own skin, doing what we're supposed to be doing and not really worrying about other people. Like, that's a bar. And I hope everyone who's listening to this conversation really puts a pin in that, because that's one of the biggest challenges we all struggle with, is being comfortable in our own skin, understanding that, look, my success is going to look different than your success, and that's okay. My failure is going to look different than your failure, and guess what? That's okay. And it's okay. It's nothing. No one's either better or worse than the other. It's all okay, because it's you. It's unique. It's wonderfully and beautifully made by God. So we should accept it, rock and roll with it.
Yeah, and I think we make more impact in how we handle adversity or handle those challenging moments than when it's all good. Everybody expects you to be a certain way and handle the good moments, and celebratory. But when you've got that peace and you've got that confidence and that strength when you're going through some adverse moments, you want to talk make an impact, be strong and be confident when things aren't going your way.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that's a way to make some incredible impact in this community and in the watching world.
So thinking about like holding steady in the midst of challenges. You mentioned coaching, you mentioned playing, even in the entrepreneurial world. Talk to us a little bit about maybe a challenge that you've had to, in essence, put that into practice, where I had to hold steady when stuff was really, really shaky. And how did you handle it? And what did you learn from that?
Well, a couple things, a couple of examples that come to mind. When I was coaching with Coach Burrow, obviously everybody knows that we got fired. When we got fired, I had a 6-month-old, and in the coaching world, we don't have family here in Knoxville, and so in the coaching world, there's a lot of coaches that their spouse does not work because they really have to work inside the home to take care of everything because we're gone so much. So when we got fired, and I was making 40 grand, married with a child, and another one on the way. I'm sorry, no, we didn't have one on the way. Just when Charlie was 6 months old. Rubber meets the road there. Like, what are you going to go do? How are you going to make things happen? And I started pounding the pavement and making phone calls. When we got fired, I was not involved in any of the things. I was not fired by the NCAA directly because of doing the wrong thing with Coach Burrow. I was just on the staff, so we got fired. And so I went to the NCAA. I went to the Final Four, the coaching convention. I wore my Tennessee stuff proud, and I was trying to make relationships. That was the first time I met Conzo Martin, who Tennessee ended up hiring. Conzo Martin gets back, and there was a guy, an older gentleman, Houston Fancher, that Conzo asked Houston to run the basketball camps in the summer and take over the Bruce Pearl camps, would now become the Conzo Martin camps. And Houston, by the grace of God, said, Coach, I can do it, but I really think you need to contract Mark and me in to run the camps because he's done them forever. He knows how to do them. It would be more efficient. And Conzo hired me, and I did that for him for the summer. But I lived at that complex. I was the last one to go home, the first one to get in there. I would do anything that Conzo and the staff needed. That was my wiring anyways. My dad always taught me, like, if you ain't working, somebody else is. And so I've just always been wired as a worker. But by doing that, I slowly got the confidence, earned some loyalty. Coach Martin saw my hard work. And so eventually I got rehired by UT, which those of you that know how college coaching works, it's such a loyal game. For a coaching staff to bring somebody in from the previous staff that just got fired, man, it don't happen very often. So that was one. And then when I left coaching, like I said before, I didn't have a job lined up. And at that time, I had a 2.5-year-old, and I had a baby on the way in my second daughter. And so I remember when you start in the wealth management place, I started 100% commission. There was no baseline income. And I remember having to put $4, and I put 4 because 4 was my lucky number, my playing number. And I only had $10 left in my bank account. So I put $4 of gas in my bank account because the next pay run wasn't coming until afternoon, so about 2 p.m. later that day. And I remember thinking, like, man, Lord, like, what am I doing? Like, I was the associate head coach. I had opportunities to go coach at UCLA and coach at other big schools. Like, why am I doing? Should I take a salary? But just stayed consistent on doing the mundane, doing day after day what needed to be done to ultimately try to earn some level of success. And those were some dark days. but at the same time, man, they were awesome because I learned so much about who I am and what's possible in those moments.
Dude, and as you're talking, it just it really spoke to me, just this whole concept of you have opportunities. You know you can take the safer route, things that are basically one in the hand, right? Versus two in the bush to an extent. But you still chose to follow this thing that you know you're led to follow, right? You knew in your heart that you did not want the lifestyle of coaching for your family, even though it was sitting there. You had opportunities, lucrative opportunities, prestigious opportunities, could have led you to being a head college coach at some point and, doing all of this, but you didn't want that lifestyle. You stayed true to that thing that was inside of you, that calling inside of you that said, no, that's not what I want for my family. And it's played out for you, and it's played out well, but you had to stay the course. And it's just like, to me, like the faith walk is so interesting as we traverse through life, because you have to go through challenges so that you can actually test your faith. Like when I'm going through coaching scenarios with individuals, I talk about belief and I ask 4 questions. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? How do you practice or reinforce that belief? And then finally, how do you put that belief to test? Because if your belief cannot stand up to testing, then how strong is that belief? So you just exemplified that in how you operated in staying in the wealth management space. And, for y'all that don't know, he's been doing very well and he's killing it now. Like, I mean, he's a founder of a wealth management practice. You have a team of advisors. I mean, you're doing your thing, man. And I believe you're rewarded for that diligence and that obedience. So salute to you, my brother.
Well, thank you. But I think anybody can do it. I know anybody can do it in their own unique story. The thing about it is it takes time. You just got to keep day after day doing the mundane, like the little things that just stack up to big things over time. Anybody can do it in their career path with their kids. Like if the kid's not acting a certain way, like if we start spending a little bit more time with them and we're just doing that every day, you look up after a year, that relationship with our child, or you think about with our spouse, like if we start having a date night once a week or every other week and we consistently do that, I would bet after a year's time, our relationship with our spouse is going to be better than if I don't do it. And so the problem is we all just want that instant gratification, that instant success. Again, I think because it goes back to that comparison of like, well, hey, look at what they're doing over there, and I want that right now. And they don't realize that for 99.9% of them, it took them time to get to where they're at. And so I've been blessed. Are there challenges every day? Absolutely. But it's just because of, keeping the head down and focus on the right things with a certain vision in mind to help get there.
The mundane things over time, consistency, compounding. I heard something recently. It was talking about Warren Buffett, how 90% of his wealth was generated after the age of 60 due to compounding and compound growth. It's like the small things over time compound and grow. And, connecting this back to one of the things you mentioned about coaching and how you didn't want to live the life of a college or a pro coach, but you wanted stability when it comes to location with your family, but the opportunity to also coach your girls as they, start getting into sports. Some of the concepts that you just mentioned, the principles about doing the mundane consistently over time, connecting back to now being able to coach some of the youth sports. How are you implementing some of that into coaching youth sports now with your girls?
Yeah, well, when I started this, one of the things, like, I think we all have to have a vision or a why or a burn, something that drives us to get through those $4 in the gas tank moments. For me, I looked at, I had some investors that were going to be willing to open up a basketball facility with me. I looked at real estate. I looked at medical sales. I looked at all these different at marketing firm when I was getting out of coaching. But one of the reasons I chose the wealth management space, one, I was a finance major. Two, I loved helping people. But three, eventually you could get to the point where you've got your client base that you're serving, and you can have a little bit more flexibility of your time. And so those other avenues, I didn't feel like I could get to a point where I could coach my own kids. And that drove me like no other. So now to this day, I'm coaching my daughter. I'm assistant Knox County middle school basketball coach. And, I'm there at their practice at 4:15, 4:30 every day during the winter. Like tonight, we've got a game at 4:30. I'll be there on the sidelines. And then I'm coaching my two other daughters. They got practice at 6:15 and at 7:15. I'm there because I'm at all their other stuff because that's what matters. Could I be making more money? 100%. Absolutely. Could I be getting into more real estate deals? Could I get back into college coaching? Could I do more TV and radio? Yeah, like I could. But to me, the most important thing is being with my wife and girls. And I got stuff I got to do during the day, and I got to work hard at that and provide. But I'm not gonna put those things before being able to be with my wife and coach my kids.
Dude, like as you're talking, I think in concepts. Like that's how my brain works. And I thought freedom and flexibility rooted in authenticity. Like as you were talking, as you kind of expressed the things of your heart, right? Like the things that really matter to you. It's like freedom and flexibility rooted in authenticity because it's about your story. It's about what it is you've been gifted with, that you have been blessed with, but it's also the freedom and flexibility to do what's needed and necessary to make sure that you create that climate and culture for your family to thrive. And you made decisions that were rooted in freedom and flexibility that's rooted in authenticity. Yeah. So it's pretty dope.
I mean, look, I just came from a meeting with a high net worth real estate guy. And, your mind, like I struggle with sometimes, like, man, I'd love to get into some of that real estate stuff and get those deals. But also, you got to remember back to the being comfortable in your own skin. Like, we got to be okay with who we are. Mm-hmm. I'm going to love on all people. I'm going to try to be kind to all people at all times. But that doesn't mean everybody's got to like me, and I don't got to be like everybody else. If we're authentic in who we are, like we're talking about, and we're faithful to that authenticity, but we're also appreciative and respectful and loving to other people, no matter what their differences are. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect it. I can see them for what they see. That allows for a more enjoyable life as opposed to social media. We're going into election year next year, like as opposed to arguing against somebody else's belief. Like I may not have to agree with it. I can respect it. But I'm also going to be okay with who I am and what I believe in.
Dude, it's so interesting. Joy and fulfillment. Like the title of this podcast is Impact and Fulfillment with Coach Mike D. And, impact basically is the delta of your involvement, right? How do things change due to you being involved? Fulfillment is that through line of joy, right? And a lot of people focus solely on impact. Like, how do I get the bag? How do I get the award? How do I do this? But they don't think enough about this fulfillment piece, because that fulfillment piece is a thing that's going to carry you. That fulfillment piece is that thing that's going to tell you that, you know what, that's enough. Like, yes, that sounds cool over there, but that's not in alignment with our family structure or with what we have going on. That might disrupt this divine order that's set up in my life. Yeah, it might add a couple more M's to my net worth, but is it worth it? And at the end of the day, if it disrupts that level of fulfillment, I think you're going to have challenges there. So I like the fact that you naturally think through the lens of impact and fulfillment. It's not one or the other, it's both. And I think a lot of us need to start looking at opportunities through that lens, looking at situations and circumstances through that lens. Does this post, me making this post on social media, will this disrupt my fulfillment, or will this disrupt some things? And if so, it's not worth it, because that through line of joy is what I'm seeking along with impact. Like I want to make impact too, but I want to be fulfilled at the same dang time.
Yeah, man, I think about that, like people have good hearts, right? Like I remember when I first started in the business and I'm trying to in wealth management, I'm trying to like rub shoulders and build clients and a mentor at the time, or maybe somebody I just even thought highly of. So you need to get involved in the community. And I remember going to these good events, these nonprofit, these things that would do well in the community. And I'd go, but I wasn't passionate about that thing that nonprofit was passionate about. And so I'd go and I was unfulfilled by it. And so although I'm there, I'm not actually making impact. As opposed to if we go and spend time in the areas that we're passionate about, now all of a sudden that impact has a ripple effect. And so it's again being okay and comfortable with what are the skin that we have and what we enjoy, and just go make an impact in that world. Somebody needs us in that space to be impactful. If we're trying to be like other people, we're not authentic. We're not authentic to.
Yeah.
We're not authentic to ourselves, and thus the impact that we have is far and few between because people can see when we're inauthentic.
Yes. Yeah, dude, I'm gonna tell you, a couple of years ago, I committed to never show my face anymore. Air quotes, show my face. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I'm gonna go show my face. I don't do that. Like, honestly, I don't go places where I just have to show my face. If it's something that involves my kids or my wife, I want to be there because I want to be there in support, but I don't just go just to go. I'm not just in environments just to be in environments. And part of it, and this is where you start to, when you pay attention to how people operate and the impact that folks are having, one of the things that typically is missing if they're doing things that are really not in alignment with who they are is there's a lack of energy. Like when you look at the passion and the energy that people bring when it's something they're engaged with, it's on 10. On the flip side, if it's not something, they're just kind of bumming through it. It's like, what's the point of you being there? I heard something years ago, and it was, I forgot, I wish I knew who said it specifically, but I adopted it. It says, if it's not a heck yes, it's a no. You make it binary. It's just like, look, if I'm not fired up about it, if I'm not excited about it, if there's not something about this thing that really resonates with me, it's going to be a no. It's like, why? It's too many things out there. It's too many distractions that are pulling at our time and pulling at our energy, pulling at our resources, that it's like, you got to say no to some things.
Yeah, and in keeping with that authentic part, I mean that's one of my biggest challenges is because sometimes there is so many good things that come our way. You know, you get asked to. I mean, I lead 2 Bible studies and I'm in another one. You know, all the work stuff, the things I'm involved with, TV and radio, the nonprofit things, the boards that you get asked to be on. Like it's all good stuff, and you want to make impact, but I got to keep reminding myself that. Half empty. If the tank is half empty and I'm going to be involved in all of those good things, they're not getting what they thought they were going to get. And I'm actually being a disservice to them because somebody else who is tanks 100%, they could give more than I could even in that moment. And so it's actually somewhat selfish if I decide to do more. And again, it's something that I have to work on a weekly basis of saying yes to too many things. And because sometimes people think, well, like it's not a bad thing. Like it's good to be going to this. So let's go. And then they just get stretched in. And same thing I think happens in people's work life. And that's how the wife and kids get put on the back burner because it's like these work things, it's good. Like I'm growing the business. I'm impacting people. My employee needs me. My client needs me. Family, you'll always be there. And then all of a sudden you look up, our kids, my daughter's 13. I got 5 summers left with her, you know, until she's off to college. You look up and it's like, doggone, not only like that relationship, not only they moved out of my house, but I don't have a strong relationship with my kids. Like never do I heard this one time and it's resonated with me for a while now. Like if people are at my funeral, let's just say Coach Pearl's talking at my funeral, and he's talking about me and saying all these great things about me. Like, man, he was, for one, it convicted me about 4 years ago that I thought that the first thing that someone would say about me at my funeral was that I was a hard worker.
Mm.
Man, like what? Like hardworking is good, but if that's the first thing that they're saying about me, and
Mm.
it's not that he loved the Lord or he loved his family, he loved his kids, he made impact in people's lives, like, nah, man, like hard work is good, but am I working in the right things? But the other thing is like, what would be worse if like one of my business partners or Coach Pearl is saying all these great things about me, and my wife and my three daughters are sitting there on the front row and they're saying, well, do you even know my dad?
Mm.
Like my dad, like you're saying that Mark was there for you all the time, Coach Pearl. Like he stayed late in the office and would do whatever you said for him. And then my daughter's sitting there and be like, Dad, like I asked you to come to this recital or this event,
Mm.
and you said you couldn't be there because you're at work. Like, do y'all even know my dad?
Mm.
Like, nah, man, like that. And too many people get caught up in trying to make others like them, and those others are outside the walls of their house, and it's not as meaningful. It's not as important.
Dude, I'm gonna throw something. It's interesting because as a father, as a husband, I think about this on a regular basis, and it's one of the litmus tests that I kind of, bring to the forefront as it pertains to like opportunities and partnerships, etc. And I have to ask, am I doing this really for my family, or am I really doing this for me? Because it's like I heard a conversation on a other podcast or something about this book where this lady, I think she was like a hospice nurse, was like interviewing all of these people, that were in hospice, that were on the very on the edge of ending, their life being over, and just kind of asking like some of their regrets and some of the things. And to your point about like hard working, it's like, yes, it makes me feel good to work hard, but does it make my children and my wife feel good? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
does it do for them? And I sometimes will position it like, oh, I'm doing this for my family. Have you sat down and really asked your family, like, do they really want you to take this extra contract? Do they really want the bigger house? Do they really want the extra car or the boat or the whatever out there? Like, these are things that sometimes, especially as men, we misrepresent, and we say it's, oh, I'm doing this for my family, but really all your family wants is for you to be home tonight.
Yeah. Funny, the reason I'm smiling, funny story about that. So I was doing my annual planning. I always do my annual planning in October, when most people do it in December. The reason I do it in October is because I believe that the work that we do in November and December sets us up to have the January
Mm,
that we need to get our new year off to a great start.
I
And
love
so
it.
I think people go about it the wrong way by doing it in December, because coming out of the holidays, most industries, January ends up being slower. But if you start working in November and December like you need to meet those new goals in 2024, now all of a sudden January can get off to a great start. But I say that from the standpoint of I was doing my annual planning, and I asked my assistant to put on my calendar all the days that Knox County was out of school. And one of my goals for 2024 was going to be that when the girls are out of school, I only work a half day.
Mm,
That was it. And I asked my wife about that. I said, hey, just curious, this is what I'm thinking. Would you rather have me home a lot more when the girls are out of school? Or would you rather have us take a couple extra long weekend family vacations where, like, maybe I don't work the entire Friday
mhm,
and we go take a long vacation? Without a hesitation, she said, "Oh, I'd rather have the long weekends. Like,
mm,
I don't want you home all day when the kid, or like for most of the day when the kids are home from school, because it just becomes a lot." And my wife likes to travel. My wife likes going different places, unique experiences. But if it was for me, I was thinking I was doing a great thing for my family
mm,
by deciding like, hey, Knox County's out of school. I'm going to be home for a half day
mm,
and spend time with the wife and kids, which would have been the opposite of what my wife would have wanted. So,
mm.
like you said, like involving to the extent that we can, involving our families within our business decisions to understand why we're doing it. The other thing I think about hard work that people go right back to some of the youth sports stuff. and even as a parent, or when we're coaching people on our teams, we talk a lot to people about, hey, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, put in the extra time. But we spend so much time on that and very little time on the vision of where that hard work is going to get them. And so, like, if my kids see hard work and all they see is a stressed out dad, an anxious dad, a short tempered dad, an unhappy dad, then they're going to look at me, be like, well, why, dad, you're working hard, but I don't want that for my life. Why would I work hard? Like, you're stressed out all the time. You have no patience. You know what I mean? And so if we're going to work hard, we have to resemble a good individual while we're working hard. And then we got to talk about the why and purpose for what we're trying to obtain with that hard work. Otherwise, with our kids, like if I'm talking to my girls about, hey, you got to work hard at basketball and get better at this shot, but if there's no vision behind it, there's nothing for them to tie on to of why they're actually working hard.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you what's so interesting. So one of the it's actually one of the chapters in my latest book. It's basically about, everybody wants a tactical plan, like what we need to do and how to do this. We spend so much time on the tactical, but we don't spend enough time first building and developing the intangibles. So my thing is, if you focus on building the intangible, doing the understanding, doing the deep dive, like you mentioned the why. So I was even connecting the dots, and I thought this is where you were going when it comes down to expectations on the back end. So there are certain people, like for instance, we're all different. You working hard got you into playing Division I basketball, but going into the Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame, taking your team to the Sweet 16 and all of that. I could shoot 20,000 shots a day growing up. I ain't playing college basketball on nobody's team, right? It's just, I don't care who you are, I may have been able to play college football, but as far as college basketball, it was not happening. I could shoot all day. And I said all of that to say we have to also start off understanding who we are. And this goes back to this whole identity piece, because we're all wired differently. And some people miss out on the fact that, yes, working hard is one component, but you also got to start with some intangibles, and I always use the example, Usain Bolt was already the fastest kid on the playground before he started training. So let's not get it twisted that he was just average speed guy that all of a sudden got a good coach and became the fastest man of all time. No, he got out of bed and in church shoes would beat anybody on the playground. Right. You add that to the hard work, then you got the fastest man ever. Yeah. So I think that's a component of it as well.
Yeah. And having that, being passionate about something, like actually wanting to be good, but there's also difference. I think about my oldest daughter, we didn't push her in sports. We had her play, like we're going to be an active family. But if she don't want to play after that season's over, if she don't want to play the next season, she don't have to play. Mm-hmm. And she's tall for her age. And so she started to grow into her body. A lot of parents, what I see is, hey, Susie's not she's not playing a bunch in 6th grade. And so let's take her out. Like but what happens with these kids is they start having some level of success. And all of a sudden they'd be like, yeah, I might be able to be pretty good. And so they decide like, all right, I'm going to start working at this a little bit. And so just because how I see something or how I went through it in my career doesn't mean that somebody else's route and how they're going to do it is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so we got to be able to understand people's time frame and listen to them and ask good questions and guide them, but then also be a truth teller in their life and being like, hey, look, my daughter, like, right, if you're 4'10" and you're unathletic and you want to play volleyball or play basketball, like you're probably not going to play in college, and be truth tellers to that, because people need more truth tellers in their life. Everyone thinks they don't want to ruffle feathers, and they just want to say, hey, Mike, yeah, go ahead, do it. You can be great at it. I support you. And when in reality, they need to be telling them like, no, that's not the right thing for you,
It's real. Listen, and I'm glad you went there, because I think more of us need to go there, right? And it's not telling people what they can't do. It's more so helping them to really understand where they have natural gifts, and then areas in which maybe there's some gifting that still is needing to be desired. You know what I'm saying? But it's real.
Yeah, I mean, if I ask my daughter, right, hey, Charlie, do you want to be a lady vol someday, or do you want to even be on the high school team? What do you think kids that want to be a lady vol, what do you think they're doing to get to that place? And as opposed to me telling her what to do, asking her the question and letting her think, 9 times out of 10, they give you the answer. But now if they're giving you the answer, they're saying the answer as opposed to me giving it to them, their buy-in to go doing it is so much higher than if I do it. Or if they say it and they don't do it, now you just really know, like, all right, you're not passionate about this. It's not going to happen.
And that ties back into what we were talking about earlier, when you're going places and being involved in even good things that you're not passionate about, you don't bring that level of energy. And that energy, in a lot of instances, is the thing that separates where you could be versus where you are. And I think that's something that we have to be very mindful of. I'm also going to be mindful of time here. I know we got a hard stop in a few minutes. But before we get out of here, man, you know, do you have any, I guess, kind of parting advice? I mean, this is all about impact and fulfillment. This is about your story and, you know, your journey, the twists and turns that kind of led you to where you are now, some of the principles and the concepts that, you know, you applied to your life with your family and how you do business. Do you have any kind of parting insight that you'd like to leave with the audience today?
Well, you know, I believe that, you know, we're all uniquely designed by God for a reason in this time of the world, with the things that we got going on and the people around us. And each one of us are gifted. Like, we have unique gifts. And like, I just encourage people to use those gifts to the best of their ability and don't get sidetracked by what somebody else has or doesn't have, and decide that you're not good enough. Like, you are good enough, and you can make a great difference. And it just starts with what we tell ourselves, the thoughts that we tell ourselves. That is the foundation to start taking the actions. If we're not telling ourselves that we can do great things or we can make the changes, then it's going to be really hard to take the necessary steps to actually make the changes because we're not believing it. We're not telling ourselves. We talk to ourselves more than anybody else. And so be a great self-talker. Tell yourself great things about yourself, and then just incrementally start doing those little mundane things that are getting you closer to who you want to become or where you want to get. And if there's going to be peaks and valleys, it's not as exciting if there weren't the peaks and valleys. Right. And so just stay the course. And then also know that it's okay to seek help from other people, from coaches like Mike, from therapists, from people of wisdom that are older, that have been through it. Like, it's okay to kind of humble ourselves a little bit and understand that nobody has all the answers. Nobody, even Warren Buffett, who you mentioned earlier, he don't have all the answers. And so it's okay to seek wisdom and guidance and coaching and therapy to help get you through some tough moments and even the good moments to ultimately get you to where you're designed to be and end up.
Man, listen, man. If y'all need to do anything, you need to rewind this thing about a minute and listen to Mark Pancratz, because he really dropped the bar there. The narrative that you tell yourself, that self-talk, nobody talks to you more than you do. Be mindful of the self-talk that you are giving to yourself, because that's going to impact how you approach days that are tough, but also days that are great. Your self-talk matters. The mundane, do the mundane things. Do the mundane things day in and day out, because success happens over time. It's a compound effect. And finally, seek help. If you're in need of something, seek help. If you're not in need of something, connect with somebody, because at the end of the day, we're not built to live in isolation on an island. We're built to connect. We're built to build bridges. We're built to create community, and you not seeking help is going to hamper you. There's an African proverb that states, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And if you really stop and you think about that, that's exactly what Mark just dropped here. So, ladies and gentlemen, y'all just got blessed by my guy. Do you do social media and everything? Can people follow you or connect with you? Just
my first and last name on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook.
Okay. So make sure y'all follow Mark Pancratz. I'll have that in the show notes. And if you've never heard of him before, make sure you shout him out and let him know you heard about him on Impact and Fulfillment with Coach Mike D. And make sure to follow him. He's got some great insight. If you're looking for wealth management and all of that, reach out to him and his team. He's got you covered. And I want to say thank you, my brother.
Thanks so much, Mike. Hey, talk about impact, man. You are making incredible impact, and people that don't even let you know on a daily basis, they don't reach out. I can assure you, you're making ripples long, far away from even Knoxville, Tennessee. So I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Oh, man, I appreciate that, my brother. And as always, y'all make sure to grab a copy of my latest book, The 33 Laws of Impact and Fulfillment, currently on Audible and Amazon. And until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.
I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and follow Coach Mike D everywhere on social media. Y'all be blessed, well, and wise.